Hi, I'm Barbara Ireland, and I had a near-death experience. And my feeling about near-death experiences in general is that each person that has one and comes back with a memory of it and information, and very often some kind of guidance or teaching, the teaching and the guidance is exactly designed for that person. And many of us, as you've seen, have shared it with others, and we find that it resonates with many other people, but it's so beautifully designed for that person in their own life. So the same was true for mine for sure. Mine began sometime before I was singing. It was my career at the time, or developing a career anyway, in singing and music. Played music my whole life. And I was on tour with the guitar player from Pearl Jam, Stone Gossard, and we were in a band together. We were on stage in Brooklyn having a great time. The audience was having a great time. And then I noticed a man in the audience standing right directly in front of me, hating our show. Just without using words, he was very verbal, let's just say. He was just like, oh, crossing his arms and just not into it. A big dude, can't miss him, right in front of me. And first I thought, oh, there's, where we're playing badly, or we had a few different people on the stage with us, and I thought he's not liking that. And then I'm like, wait a minute, he doesn't like my singing. He doesn't like my singing. And it was very interesting to observe. Number one, of course, there's going to be people that don't like your show, but for some reason, I just connected onto this man like a hook, and I couldn't stop thinking about him. Like, who really cares? There's hundreds of people that are enjoying it, but I hooked in. And as soon as I got these negative thoughts about our band and then this and that, and then they landed on me, and I started thinking how bad of a singer I am and how I'm not going to hit the next note, and I'm going to forget the lyrics, and how come I'm even on stage with Stone? What's going on? That was when this crazy waterfall of negative thinking started flowing into my mind I had never heard before. It was just one mean thing after another I was saying to myself in my own head. Well, that night I was lying in bed and I was thinking about this, and especially about the stream of mean things I was saying about myself to myself. And we all have these thoughts. If you just tune in for a second in your head, you're going to hear yourself complaining about you doing something wrong, or how you're always late, or you're clumsy, or oh, you're doing that again, or it's these old things that we have playing in our head. So I heard these, but they were so many that night. So I thought, I need to get rid of them. They're clearly not healthy for me. They're not making my life any happier. What am I going to do? And I had this grand idea that I would sign up for a boot camp of sorts, where you go and you every day you face fears and you develop courage and you get through your boundaries. That'll do it. So I went to sleep. When I got back home after the tour, I did research and I found one and I signed up. So months later, this boot camp is starting. I invited my best friend to go with me. Poor friend, but lucky for me, she was there. And every day was very hard. It was, I signed a non-disclosure form, so I can't tell you, but there was very high things and blindfolds and fire and scary people that popped out just to freak you out and try to develop your ability to handle scary things that happen in life. But it was done in a fairly traumatic way, at least that part for me. I wouldn't recommend the camp. Let's just say, let's just say that. So every day I was eating mounds of food, drinking tons of water because we were outdoors and intense, and I didn't want to be dehydrated. We were sleep deprived. I slept 3 hours a night for a week. And the last main day was an endurance activity outside in the sun for a long time. And it was a timed thing, so you couldn't just dilly dally. You had to cruise through this thing. But it took hours. Halfway through, something started going funky with my body. I started feeling wobbly in my legs, and I started hearing like reverberated sound. It was very echoey and very creepy. And I thought, maybe I'm dehydrated. I better drink more water. So I drank more water. As the time went on to get back to the starting line of this thing, these visual contortions grew more and more exaggerated and frightening to the point where there were streamers off of everything. And I couldn't understand the partner I was with. She would talk to me, but it was completely garbled. Be like, what's happening? My brain wasn't untangling voices like words, but I could hear someone really far away, crystal clear, as if they were right next to me. And by the time we got back, I did finish it. And by the time we got back to the starting line, people were visually strobing, and I was pretty scared by then. And I said to someone, please get me a medic. I think I'm going to faint. And I did feel like I was going to faint. So I sat down on the ground in this woods and I waited for a really long time. And the person finally came back and said, oh, they said to just sit down, you'll be fine. Well, maybe they said that because there was no actual medic at this camp, which blows my mind. They did have someone they called a medic, and he was really sweet, I will say. And I'm really glad he was really sweet because he did not have skill in medicine. However, he did give me electrolytes, but he took like blood pressure and all this, and every time he would take that, his whole face would just get more frayed. Later, my friend finally found me, and she was just took one look and said, what happened to you? I asked her later, and she said my skin was gray and I had these really dark circles under my eyes, and my eyes had no like focus. They were vacant and just out of it. And the electrolytes were one of the things that helped me because what was happening was two things. One was heat stroke. So I was drinking all this water because it was hot out. But so heat stroke has very similar symptoms to regular stroke when you hear the word stroke. So that's why all my senses were tangling up. But more importantly for my body was something called hyponatremia, which is when you wash too much sodium out of your blood. And you can do this two ways: sweating too much, which I was doing all week, and drinking too much water. And on top of it, my body apparently doesn't even hold sodium that much, I found out later. So I have to eat lots of salt. For me. So both of these things, though, heat stroke and hyponatremia, can kill a person. So I had both of them going on at once. And this kind but so-called medic said, well, let's take you back to your tent and have you lie down. So we went back there. It was way too hot to be in my tent. So I laid under this glorious tree that I loved dearly. And when I think of her, the tree, I almost tear up because I felt like she was looking after me somehow. But I laid there, and my friend was with me now holding my hand. And it was very scary at this point because first I felt my leg go numb and basically disappear. I didn't feel it anymore. And I started screaming about my leg to my friend, and my other leg, same thing happened. Then one arm, then the other arm. So now I felt like a trapped torso and a head that couldn't move under this tree. And it's a very vulnerable and terrifying feeling. And I'm crying in a way I've never cried before. There was this feeling of air um, leaving the top of my head. Now, I had read enough spiritual books to know that often when people are dying, their life force leaves the top of their head. And that scared the hell out of me. I wasn't planning on dying. I was in a remote area. There was no cell phones, and no one thinks they're going to die. That's the My grandma lived to be 104, and my great grandfather to 106, and I was very healthy. There was no reason I was going to be dying that day. So now, while this is going on, now I got really scared. And at that moment, uh, what I call a movie started playing. My eyes were closed, so you could, it was a combination, it wasn't a memory, but you know how memories look like films? They can look like films. Well, it was like that, but crystal clear and not foggy and in and out like a memory. It was like I was watching an actual movie, a replay of something that had happened 2 weeks earlier at a band rehearsal that I was in. And I was in another band with my brother, and my brother and I had gotten into an argument about something. Now, these movies, I could see like a movie, and I was also in it at the same time. And it's hard to explain the two versions of the perception, but I could feel everything I felt in the moment exactly like it happened for me in that moment, but I was also watching it like a movie. And there we were having our argument. And at one point, this movie froze on one frame, and it was me upset. And a voice appeared out of who knows where. It was in my head. I could hear it in my head, but it wasn't my usual inner dialogue voice. And it was a male voice, very calm and gentle. And it said, "What were you thinking at that moment?" And that startled me enough that I suddenly wasn't as terrified about everything that was happening to my legs and everything. I was in that moment trying to think, what was I thinking? And then I remembered and I said it. And the moment I said my answer, the little movie went away and a new movie came in, started playing. I was in it at the same time. And this time I raised an eyebrow right when the freeze frame happened. And the voice said, "What were you thinking right then?" And I answered that. And it happened again, a new one. This time I looked down during a conversation. Freeze frame. "What were you thinking when you lowered your head?" And I answered that. This went on for several hours. These were replays of events in my life throughout my adulthood, not my childhood for some reason. And they spanned years and they'd covered many, many friendships and relationships. Each one was a specific moment where I had an internal thought. And there were a couple times I tried to lie in my answer because I didn't want to admit I had a judgment about someone, or I just wanted to be goody two shoes. Well, the voice knew the answer, and it would pause and say, "Are you sure about that?" very nice, non-judgmental, but just had me revisit my answer. And I said, well, actually, no, I was actually thinking blah, blah, blah. And as soon as I said the true answer, it would go away and a new movie would start. This continued for several hours while that puffy feeling was leaving the top of my head. At the end of the three or so hours, um, I could tell I was much weaker, but I also wasn't as focused on my body because I was kind of leaving my body. And at that point, the movie stopped and it was like a blank screen. And the voice said, Barbara, you have a choice now. Would you like to stay or go? And I knew what that meant. I was being given a choice to stay on Earth as a human or go. And I'm only tearing up because this is the moment I truly felt what it's like on the other side. I had one foot in and one foot out. I didn't 100% leave my body, but I was right on the edge between the two worlds. And what is on the other side took any fear of death away. Not the process of dying, but the actual moment of death. Zero fear for me because it's a quality of love that we do not have here, that at least I've never experienced here. It's a, it's like the very air or whatever you would call that, the space around everything is made up of molecules of love. It's in everything. It is everything. It's what it's made of. And so you're in a space of love. Like I can't even explain it because we just don't have it here. And the whole quality of that side were non-judgmental, 100% not critical, 100% forgiving, welcoming, comforting, supportive, like everything that we love about good relationships and kindness in ourselves or others. It was there, but a thousandfold. So when I was given this choice to stay or go, believe me, I was leaning to go because it, I mean, it's very lovely. It's very enticing. But I also had connections here. I had not only connections with people and unfinished business in a sense, but I also loved being in a body. I loved food. I loved moving. I loved nature. I loved reading. I loved creating. And all of these things were something I had really had to weigh. So I started asking some questions. And they were funny from the standpoint of humility, because the main thing I was asking about was my projects, my albums that were half done, my screenplays that weren't made into movies, various things I was writing. I said, well, what about all those? They're not done. And the guide said, well, Barbara, those really don't matter that much. And so that's why I think it's funny, because to anyone who has, goals in life, they think they matter. And of course goals matter, but the the voice said, the guide said, what really matters are your connections with other people. They're your relationships. If your projects connect you with them, connect them with themselves, connect them with other people, open something new within them, in their heart or their mind, then yes, they're worth a lot. And even if, if you don't have it, okay, well, it's fun, that's great, but it's not that big a deal. But if they are connecting, then it's worth a lot. So I did eventually say, okay, I would like to come back to my body. I made that choice. The voice said, okay, if you go back, you have to contact these 4 people. 3 of them you have to see in that week. Tell them about your experience and tell them these various things. For instance, how much I love the person. And it's not just, hey, I love you, just wanted you to know. No, it was like a really big deal. The voice said, tell them why you love them, what their presence in your life has meant, what they have taught you, what qualities about them do you cherish. And one of them was my mom, and she died just this last year. So that's why I'm tearing up. Of course, my mom knows I love her, right? So I'm like, but the voice was, no, you're going to be talking about love in a very different way to this person. And I had different things to tell different people. And the 4th person, I was just supposed to call every week for even 5 minutes and start rebuilding a relationship with that person. And I said I would do that. The moment that was complete, the whole other side just kind of collapsed from my experience. The puffy air started reversing its direction and going back into my body. My limbs started coming back to life. And within literally just a few minutes, I was fully back in my body. And I opened my eyes, and it was like watching, opening your eyes to a world that was so transformed because it was so extraordinarily beautiful. I think this world is probably equal parts difficult and gorgeous. I don't know if it's equal or not, but at any rate, the gorgeous parts we sometimes forget because we're so hooked into the difficult parts and we're thinking about them so often that, man, if you really start tasting food again, if you really look at a leaf again, if you really listen with full presence to music, it's a whole different experience of being on earth. And that's what began that moment. I opened my eyes and saw this incredible scene in front of me of the tree, my friend and her hair with the sun that had gone down a lot, and it was now this golden auburn color, and this big fat bee. I remember bumbling around a flower, and the color of the grass and the smells and the sound of a lecture far off. It just blew my mind what we get to experience here. And that feeling of rebirth, or whatever you want to call it, stayed with me for about a month. For every waking moment was this exquisite, ecstatic experience of, wow, I can't believe this place that I get to be in, and this body I get to have, and looking at people's eyes, looking at people's eyes when you really do it, really are present for another person, you see them and you see inside those eyes. Like, that is an amazing experience of being a human being. So that went on for a month. And then guess what started happening? I started hearing in my mind those mean thoughts starting to slowly come back again. Some of them were mean, but I would say a lot of them were worries. Like that night when I was performing with Stone, I was worried I wasn't going to hit a note. I was going to forget my lyrics. I wasn't good enough to be on stage. I shouldn't even be a singer. They were worries about me. And I started not listening to music fully. I started not tasting my food 100%. I wasn't smelling every single flower as I went on walks. I started being more normal, basically. But when I realized I heard those negative thoughts coming back, I was PO'd. And I sat down and I thought, okay, wait a minute. Those hours I was shown those little movies and I was asked that question, what were you thinking? What was the common denominator? And then I realized it was the same question, more or less, for the entire time. It was all about what was I thinking. And it was trying to show me, this guide was trying to connect for me. A very simple thing, maybe all of us know, maybe we don't, at least we're not very conscious of it, I don't think, that what we're thinking has a total connection with what's happening or what's our perception of what is happening. Anything could be happening out there, but my thought about it is what's going to make it positive or negative for me. My thought about it later is going to make me happy or sad later when it's not even happening anymore. My thought about a fear that hasn't even happened and may never happen in the future is going to alter how I'm feeling in that moment. And it was showing me this connection between negative thinking and outer world and how they're dancing with each other in a way that was causing me a hell of a lot of harm and suffering. I studied neuroscience, cellular biology, which is a lot about how we feel about things, which is also connected to our thoughts. I studied spiritual traditions on this, a lot of different angles for 3 years solid, from a layperson standpoint, anyway. But I gained a lot of knowledge and I practiced all sorts of different techniques on myself. And slowly, I noticed my happiness started raising. My happiness started being more regular instead of up and down, up and down. And the worries started evening out. My thoughts were much kinder to myself. I was a kinder person to myself and others. And slowly money started shifting, energy started shifting, relationships healing really fast. And I thought, okay, there's something really big to this. And after about 3 years, I had really settled on a method I was using for myself. I call it the de-looping method. Because what I discovered is there are two kinds of negative thoughts. One is a negative thought that comes in our head. We can't control what we think, but we can control whether we're going to grasp onto that and chew it. Well, negative thoughts come in. Are we going to grasp it or let it go? I was grasping a lot and what I call looping on thoughts, especially worries. And I couldn't stop the loop. It's like when you get a stupid song stuck in your head and you just can't stop it. Well, I figured out how to stop those songs. You replace them with a different song. And very soon, the first song's going to go away. You can't push it away. You can't push negative thoughts away. The more you push on those things, the stronger they get. What you resist persists, fully connects here. And what I realized is there is a glass ceiling to joy. And the only thing holding us back is how we are perceiving what's happening out there that's just happening. But are we going to take it in and contort it and make it into this big disaster in our minds that we're going to loop on? The second we do that, negative emotions start, negative behaviors start, we start going downhill in it and we get dark, it goes bad. And so I've learned to basically interrupt the loop. I can't stop the negative thought, but I can stop myself from looping on this thing, from hooking in. If we can't hear what we're saying in our heads, we can't do a thing about it. It's just going to run our lives like it did mine when I'm on stage and all these thoughts are bombarding. And I thought, I'm having all those all the time. I just don't know it. Well, the answer was yes. Carl Jung said this amazing thing. Until we make the unconscious conscious, it will direct our life and we will just call it fate. That's more or less the quote. Until we make the unconscious conscious, these negative thoughts are going to direct our life and we're just going to call it fate. But what if we make them conscious and then we unhook from these negative thoughts, these worst case scenarios, these resentments, these jealousies, these anxieties, this self-doubt? What happens if you unhook from the loop of self-doubt? Can you imagine what could be possible for every single person when they start unhooking from that and bringing in thoughts that are helping them and releasing the pockets of negative energy that's left over from these thoughts that get stored in the body? When those start going, when they start healing, there's room for true miracles to start happening. I feel like this near-death experience was a true miracle for me, as terrifying as it was. So information about the de-looping method and my book, they're in the description. And I wish anyone watching this to just take this one thing away. Just start listening. What is being said in your head first thing you wake up? Or while you're on the phone with someone you know that kind of triggers you, listen to the things that your mind starts telling you. Or if you're about to give a presentation, or you're called into your boss's office, what are you saying in your head before you go in? Just notice these things, because those are our clues about where we can heal ourselves, where we can start de-looping, and where we can start gaining a whole lot more joy.